Hello, 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 YouTube fam. Just after 5:55 PST, well, it turned to 5:56 Pacific Standard Time, just as it said, you're live. So thank you for joining me. My show and tell will be a necklace, a piece that I made many, many years ago on a chain that you may or may not have seen in some previous lives that has a beautiful pendant made by a dear woman who, rest in peace, Darsha Slape, made. Uh, I'll get started as per usual. I've written quite a bit, so I imagine this would be about 20 minutes. I've written a total of 13 pages, but warning, I'm only reading half, so about six-ish, five and a half, six-ish. We're going to call this piece On the Subject of Water Made to Look Like Alcohol. And I will also say that this will be available on my blog, URUOAllThat.com eventually, but maybe not right away this evening, the 27th of November. Let's see if I don't need these actually. I think I'll use them. Darn it. Shit got real, y'all. Hashtag 41 and counting. It reminded me of my two favorite places, an art classroom, a bar. Cincinnati Bartending School was on the second floor of a corner building on the north side, a place currently deemed an artsy area, which I suppose could mean anything on or between the lines. What I saw were coffee shops, restaurants, homes, and churches with steeples so steep they looked like crowns that reached relentlessly for the sky. Curved bells were in cubed cutouts, which made me see and hear Europe. Sounds sung in the tintinnabulation of cast iron and scene built in the slopes of Cincinnati on hills pitched like the peaks of places of worship. A city known for having some of the most historic buildings and residents standing per capita in comparison to other United States cities. Cincinnati has a huge history of German immigration, Jewish too, which is why to this day there's a neighborhood known as Over the Rhine, and one of the largest Oktoberfests outside of Germany is in Cincinnati, a city known for beer because of its demographic past, which is kind of how I ended up in Cincinnati bartending school. Upon arrival to the Natty area, I thought about enrolling in a culinary program. Cooking is an activity that I have always enjoyed. It is not only pleasurable, it is peaceful also. It settles and focuses me. I could prep cook or even sous chef for a living and love it. Chopping vegetables evenly and repeatedly, my style. With all the chaos in the world, active then, my own personal life, and my previous career, I figured a kitchen would be a manageable type of mayhem to work in. Yes, maybe there would be a level of urgency like there was in emergency medical services. However, it seems it would be more doable. Everything would be confined to a kitchen. We would all have certain roles, and the stakes would be less high, unless you meant the temperature of beef. Plus, I was a team player. Also, cooking can be so colorful. I wasn't eating many steaks then. I began eating mostly vegan, in my household anyway, which meant veggies, veggies, veggies. Orange squash, red bell peppers, purple cabbage, green herbs, brown or black beans, sriracha to drizzle, and maybe toasted nuts or paprika to sprinkle for flavor and presentation. In cooking, taste and appearance can be a big deal. I felt that way about life. Still do. Turns out there's an opportunity for serving drinks with presentation, especially if you have access to a few nifty pieces of fruit. In addition to lemon, lime, or orange wedges, one can and sometimes must peel orange rind for mixed drinks, just as one must muddle mint or add maraschino cherries to some. Then you can also get into Bloody Marys or Marias, which allows you to play in the veggie game. Carrots, celery, pickles, onions, or even bacon if you're not so vegan, which is what I loved about bartending school. Not that there was bacon, because there wasn't. There wasn't actually even real fruit. There was fake fruit. It reminded me of when I was at the Child Development Center, where there was a pretend kitchen. That is what I loved about it. It was like school before it started to suck. We had more tactile learning, playtime, role playing, and imagination. It was like preschool, except you had to be 21 or over to attend. And unlike preschool, it did not have fake eggs or fake bacon, though it did have fake fruit. There were pretend citrus wedges, fake maraschino cherries, which already seem a little phony in real life, or sus, as they may still call it nowadays. There was fake alcohol at bartending school. As much as it looked like a real bar, dimly lit with bar stools and a few tall, round tables, it didn't quite smell like one. Besides the faint smell of cigarettes that blew back from the fire escape on breaks, or the smells on the clothing of us smokers, it didn't have that almost nasty smell that a bar has. One nearly nauseating One whose nearly nauseating twinge goes away when your nose hovers over the glass just before the first sip of alcohol. Instead of real alcohol at Cincinnati bartending school, there was dyed water in brand labeled bottles neatly aligned behind the bar. Caramel tinted tequila, transparent vodka and gin, light golden colored Chardonnay, and darker cognac. There was green fake Midori and blue Curacao. We weren't supposed to mix the colors for drinks, though I really wanted to. I would have made a good TA, teacher's assistant. Unfortunately, we could only refill the bottles from the spouts of what appeared to be large, old, rectangular Brita dispensers. It was actually a pretty eco-friendly environment. We poured as little as we could down the drain. There were funnels to refill bottles from glasses. This all reminded me of my colorful, resourceful childhood. There was, of course, an ice dispenser, something I was familiar with from my YA days, baristaing as a young adult and working in restaurants, and even later in the firehouse. Never leave the scoop in the ice. It's unsanitary. Besides the ice station behind the bar, we had to fill the sinks with high-grade antibacterial soaps, hot water, the regular standards of sanitization. I also got to enjoy the scrubbers that lived suctioned to the bottom of the sink like a sea anemone on a rock. After years of sitting on the opposite side of the bar, I was finally behind it. I got to see why bartenders always do that snazzy up and down motion with their arms after they cleared the bar top. The bar top, something one must always keep clean like a cooking station or the floors of the firehouse. In fact, there was a bin of rags just like we had in the firehouse. I loved buffing the bar, and I loved the industrial grade stainless steel everything else. I'd wanted to be in an industrial grade kitchen after having worked in the firehouse. I loved the sound and sight of large metal mixing bowls. I loved baking sheets, cast iron pans, wolf ranges with BTUs that could boil water almost as fast as the speed of lighting them, salamanders that could toast and crisp cheeses or caramelized carnitas. I lived in the kitchen in the firehouse. Whether as a probie, firefighter, or officer, I participated in cooking. Even if I was not dubbed the cook of the day, I helped. We all pitched in. I loved it. Many hands make light work. We all chopped onions, broccoli and carrots, peeled potatoes and minced garlic, Salad dressing and soups were all made from scratch every night, along with a main course of meat, a starch, and a vegetable. We ate well. We ate every meal like it was our last or a holiday feast. After a big fire, folks would break back into the fridge. You always make enough food for leftovers for all. If there's no fire, people eat leftovers for breakfast. Besides coffee and the paper, there's always someone eating meat and potatoes or rice in the firehouse. One of many routines one can count on. Which is why, when I left the FD suddenly and stressfully, I figured that cooking was something I could gravitate to. I had improved on it in my time in the firehouse, and it calmed me down. I was always watching cooking shows and secretly wishing I could host one or guest appear. With everything new and away from home in Ohio, I initially sought to find a kitchen. I could make a home in a kitchen. Plus, I could meet some interesting characters if I worked in a restaurant. I knew that for sure. I had the attention span focus and belief in consistently chopping, slicing, or dicing an onion. Plus, I had learned some tricks of the trade via TV and an apprenticeship. I was a probie at one of the firehouses with the best culinary reputations in the city. In your downtime at work as a firefighter, since you can't leave the station and you have help, people collaboratively cook elaborate meals sometimes, bake, work out, maintain equipment and tools, tinker. I worked out and cooked mostly. I didn't really like to commit to a movie or watch much other than The Warriors and a few shows, sometimes cooking shows. In Cincinnati, I researched the culinary program at the local community college. It looked amazing. When I took a tour, they were actually filming an episode for the Food Network. Cincinnati State Technical and Community College has state of the art facilities. When I learned how much it cost as an out of state student and how long it took to gain residency, I was bummed that I couldn't enroll right away. So I looked into alternative and shorter programs, which is when I realized they had a brewing science program with Sam Adams and several other less famous, more quality local craft breweries and its rich history. I thought, hey, maybe I'll become a brewmaster. Enter another white male dominated field and dominate. Make my own line of craft beer that I could give cool names like Lagunitas had done. Maybe I would be a capitalist and sell out eventually to a larger corporation. Anyway, it turned out that even though the brew science was a shorter program and therefore cheaper, I did not qualify for financial aid since it was a certificate program. Bummer. I thought I was going to be winning, learning how to brew off of FAFSA for a while, which is how I ended up at bartending school. I figured I could learn about alcohol on a budget, more about alcohol anyway. Maybe drive over to Kentucky every now and again to learn more about bourbon. Maybe even specialize in it. Possibly factor in my pre-parties as prerequisites and save some more money. Also, come to find out, Covington had gay bars. Parts of Kentucky right over the river were gay friendly, which is why you don't know what you know until you know it sometimes. Plus, after I'd aced bartending school, I was going to land a mixology job. Being nearly 40 years old, not proof, and obviously gay, there were bars that I just wasn't going to apply to in that state and city of which I was not familiar. One where I didn't want to go out exploring too far in the Trump era and with some of the flags I saw flying from some of the cars on the freeway. Don't get me wrong, a kumbaya group of folks had welcomed me and my then wife with open arms after we had several highballs on a thirsty Thursday at the patio. It doesn't matter what your political beliefs and or skin color are under the right circumstances and influence. Still, exploring in an age where violence against blacks and many non-whites was on the rise, or at least on video, viral, We did not feel like it was a good move to venture around alert or intoxicated. I could hardly watch the news as my own personal horrors unfolded. Mental health crises, my brother barely evading prison, the place where my father died, which I was still bitter about. I lived with suspended and present grief. Not only that, but I had let friends and lovers down. I had let myself down. Alcohol was not only my main confidant, it was the least judgmental of all my company. That is why it was my favorite company. Alcohol was always down for the ride. We never told each other no, which can be a problem sometimes. Being a blind cheerleader can lead you to lose caution. I was unchecked when it came to alcohol. Codependent. We were bad influences on each other. We were also best friends. All the time we spent together at home and out and about, I am surprised we hadn't really kicked it much behind the bar, except for the one time at the Broken Record. Best name for a bar ever. And something I'd become later in life. They let me behind the bar there once when I lived next door and upstairs back in the day. I thought it'd be a win-win if I worked there. After they started to teach me an impromptu pour behind the bar, I got into an argument with a regular over the pronunciation of koozie versus cozy. If it wasn't the right fit or timing, after all, it turned out. Maybe now was, I thought then. I started thinking maybe I should work in a meditative kitchen. Then the goal was to become a biracial brewmaster, then a bartender with extensive alcohol based resume and orientation. I was such an experiential learner and fan of alcohol that I had tried all that I could, all the time that I could, including things considered obscure, at least in Cincy, like mezcal and absinthe. Hell, I was all about adventure. I figured my adventures in life on and off shift, I'd be the perfect bartender. The right ratio of storyteller and counselor, icy and in the proper glass, like I was about to learn. I would be a solid rock, like the big square cubes some bourbon connoisseurs prefer. I learned firsthand and pour as I was later employed. I succeeded in bartending school, flourished, if that is a feeling of flight, a takeoff before finding out something was faulty and about to fall apart, moments before a mayday. It felt familiar as I landed behind the bar in bartending school, a wooden bar with a dark, shiny surface and a barn like tabletop door, one that you could raise to enter or one you could walk down and around, which we were eventually invited to do in the hands on practical portion of class. I loved the way the course flowed. I loved the way the water based liquid made to mimic liquor poured from the spouts that my teacher preferred all faced the same direction. I did too. She was professional. She had standards. A standard with how she kept the bar and the line she surfed between friendly and firm, like a good bartender should be. She had a part down the middle of her thick hair, separated in waves, two halves, dark, probably black, but gradually outnumbered by graying hair that flew in wings, into wings, not too far past her ears. Her hair was overall about an inch above her shoulders, a standard in the FD. She did not wear a uniform like we did as firefighters, or even like baristas did in Italy, but she did have consistency and predictability to her appearance. Maybe also because it was winter. She wore a sweater and sometimes a turtleneck, and jeans, boots, and always a black jacket. Not only was it winter, but I think she and her husband, who ran the school all parts, teaching, keeping books, and paying bills, needed to save money. I was paying a New Year's deal, having my mixology certificate by 2020. They were saving on heat by not turning it on. There was only myself and one other woman enrolled in the day crash course. Most other students were night students, too busy working, parenting, and or both to come during the day, except for makeups. So, besides the occasional student from the previous semester or evening session, I was one of two in the class. The teacher to student ratio is phenomenal for repetition, hands on, and time to ask and answer questions. We studied for tests together and timed each other's pores. I felt guilty enjoying all the teacher attention when I knew it was affecting her pockets. I liked my teacher. Even though she wasn't warm and fuzzy like her classroom wasn't either, I felt that way about her and her space. What you saw was what you got. Though I believe she was sober and professional during instruction, like I was on duty not too long before as a LT, she may not have been off shift, like I may not have been either. I suspected this because her hands shook. She managed to have the perfect pour consistently. But between and sometimes during her demo as my automatic partner, other classmate, and I couldn't help but observe as we watched intently but did not mention the tremors in her hands. I believe, based on some official research, if you counted my time on the clock in the FD, that she was probably a hardcore alcoholic. I didn't know about her husband as he wasn't on site anytime I was. I think she drank for a long time, as long as I probably would at my rate by her age. Her hands showed signs of age, like her hair, except in spots instead of strands. It was hard to fully gauge her age, even though I'd run several calls on a variety of civilians ranging in time served on Earth. She smoked a lot, which I believe tinted her skin yellow, like the walls can be in a smoker's house. Under the flap in one of the pockets of her practical jacket lived a pack of Marlboros, the color of Cincinnati's baseball team, the Reds. There was no telling how old she was or if she wasn't a chronic smoker and heavy drinker for enough years to make her hands shake. I suspected she was 50 something. I couldn't confirm late or early, not even from the depth or tread of her wrinkles from where we sat across the bar, nor from where I stood on the fire escape during smoke breaks. The little I knew of her, I learned on smoke breaks. I relapsed on cigarettes under stress. We had lived two very different life experiences, just as we smoked two different brands of cigarettes. But I respected her. I wanted to impress her. Maybe I was the goody two shoes and not my neighbor, partner, classmate, like I thought or had projected. I mean, after all, I had been way too eager to offer her a lighter when she needed one. Maybe I was a brown boozer and noser. That is the first half of a two-part read aloud called On the Subject of Water Made to Look Like Alcohol, soon to be uploaded on my blog. Thank you for tuning in. And if you have not yet got a chance to subscribe as well, please do that. Wishing you love, care, and moon prayer. All that. Team Easy.